Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. No, I want 100 Thieves, not Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise. Anyways, I need lights on. It is Thursday. We can maybe get a little bit better of an idea of how the market digested the CPI yesterday. I think that we are kind of in an interesting spot in the market, and so let's come over here to the charts and I'll explain what I mean. So when you look here at the treasuries, I mean, there's a pretty good peak there yesterday. Such an interesting move, really big jump up and then a push back down. But then they did recover it for the most part. So you are kind of like breaching some pretty critical levels. Remember that some of this stuff up here was like panic, right? This is like, oh no, the economy is going to die sort of a thing. So for us to be getting back up into those levels is pretty significant from like a momentum perspective. Okay, that's like long term. Probably you still want to be long, right? Like especially if we're playing it on what is it, like TLT and those instruments, right? Probably long-term holders, you're still long. But from a pricing perspective, this is like, what are the chances that we get a 50 basis point cut? I think that it's pretty low, but the market pricing is still saying that there's maybe a 40% chance. So the pricing is maybe a little bit ahead of itself, despite the momentum. And so that kind of provides an interesting space for us here in the treasuries. But unfortunately, the end result of that is probably range bound. Here we got the S&P 500. Okay, they were up gently yesterday. I think that the S&P is winding up and could be ready for another pretty strong rally coming here in the next few weeks. Coming to oil, recovering a little bit, but they're still struggling, man. Granted, I'm not so sure that you know, being above $80 a barrel could really be sustained anyways. Gold and silver, well, gold and silver have been hurting lately, but it's looking pretty good this morning. Gold in particular really recovering some of those losses. And copper may be actually even starting to get a bid today, huh? Well, and meanwhile, the Japanese yen just sideways. But you know, that's probably okay, right? If the yen can just go sideways for a little while, maybe that's the best thing for everybody. I don't know. But the dollar showing a little bit of weakness still. And then Bitcoin, Bitcoin, you know, noted this yesterday while we were on the stream that like Bitcoin had sold off pretty hard. And I was kind of wondering what was going on there and how it fit in with the larger economic framework and what we were seeing with inflation and everything. But I think that really what was going on here was that the government had moved more money over to Coinbase to sell. And so the Bitcoin traders responded accordingly. So that's basically where we're at. Now, when we come in and we look at today, let me make sure that I've got my news squawk on. So we do get retail sales today here. Retail sales and initial jobless claims. So remember, yesterday we were kind of hinting that some people are not as concerned about the inflation thing, and they think that retail sales is a bigger deal. So the number that we're getting here in a few minutes, we're expecting a spot 4% rise in U.S. retail sales month over month. And also, don't we get a core retail sales? Yes, we get core retail sales month over month, spot 1. So core in retail sales means it doesn't include vehicles and energy. So the vehicle market has been up really, really big, right? But everything else, and not even up really, really big, but like recovering from a huge, huge, huge fall. Okay. But everything else is kind of like, meh. So there is a possibility that retail sales comes out like negative, and you see a market reaction to that, which might be a little bit difficult to sort out, but I'm guessing that it would be treasuries up, equities down. Okay. I think that it would be bad news is bad. But let's see what happens. Well, my news squawk is saying that they're gonna list the initial jobless claims first, which is kind of weird to me. I'm gonna turn the order entry off here. I don't want to trade this initial movement. I'm already not liking the micros. You know, like obviously the liquidity pulls, but what I really hate is when there's a huge spread. All right, here we go. Ooh. Yeah, slammed down. Okay, well, the headline retail sales month over month was 1% versus an expected spot 4, and then the core retail sales was spot 4 versus an expected spot 1. That is much higher than expected. The market does not like this. The market does not like this at all. Remember I was saying, like, the chances of a 50 basis point cut, I really don't see it, and the pricing is ahead of itself. Well, now that comes into play, like, big time. At the very least, I think we go back to 4% in the long run. I think 4%. But 4% is like 100 ticks away in the micros, so that's probably too far away to think about. Let's just kind of see where things settle here. I don't, you know, there's still a big spread in the micros, so I don't think I can really try trading that. Especially like when it's at the low. Would like to see some backwash first. Man, they really did not like that. How far back did we go on the volume profile? Ooh, that is actually... Okay, so they stopped like literally at the low of the day from 2 days ago. So that's a key level. If they decide to go for a little bit more, then you really start to get into like wild trend day type territory. Yeah, so now Angel pointing out that we are skyrocketing. You know, the scenario that I had painted out was probably if the retail sales numbers are weak, you could see the equities sell and the treasuries buy, because that's like a weakening recessionary economy. But I didn't really go into the what if they're stronger than anticipated. Well, stronger, we should see lower rates. Equities, I wouldn't have been so sure. Equities, maybe that's a buy, maybe that's a sell. Maybe higher rates is no good, right? But we're getting the answer. The answer is the market likes that. And I still think, obviously, we've already moved a lot, so I don't know if a trade, you know, a day trade makes sense here. But I again, I think that the S&P 500 is set up to have a decent rally here over the next few weeks. Okay, let me reset my DOM here, because they are kind of testing that. It does look to me like they're going for it. So 113 is one spot that might attract them, but we are kind of like we are now into the mode where like anything is possible here in the treasuries. Throw a sim trade out there and flex your sim muscles. I probably should have gone short at L3. But at the moment, I'm like, that is kind of like in the back of my mind, maybe I should be taking a trade, but at the moment, I think I want to focus more on analyzing what was going on here. So was interesting watching the crypto respond to the news and more. Well, so again, I think that the movement in crypto yesterday had more to do with the U.S. government sending more of their Bitcoin from their Bitcoin wallet over to the exchanges. It's kind of funny because Donald Trump was talking about that, and his whole thing was like the U.S. should have a strategic reserve, et cetera, et cetera. Because what's going on is all of the Bitcoin holders are really pissed that the government is selling off the coin that they own and depressing the price. Okay, so they went for it. Did they tag 113 even? Okay, there was 16 contracts went off at 113 even. It does look like that's going to be a bit of a break. We'll see how far back they can make it. Yeah, in crypto there is an yes, because in all honesty, what generates demand for Bitcoin? People don't use it. I really think in the larger scheme of things that the Bitcoin community made a huge mistake by turning it into something that is like quote unquote a store of value and removing the utility part of the coin. Because the utility part of the coin gives people an incentive to have it. Like certain retailers, other kinds of, they're going to want to have a certain amount of coin so that they can provide the service of allowing people to pay with it. Without that, the only thing that is really truly the demand for Bitcoin is speculation. There is no actual real hard mechanism to create demand in Bitcoin. It all becomes speculation at that point, right? And then yes, you have to try and convince everybody to not sell, because there's not, like, you notice over here in the treasuries, right? Because the treasuries have been down big, okay? But you don't see the government coming out every day being like, guys, don't sell your treasuries. It's really bad to sell your treasuries. You're going to miss out on all of the massive gains that you're going to get from holding treasuries in the long run, yada, yada. You don't hear the U.S. government say that stuff. You know why? They don't care. They don't care because they know that with the system that we have, that there are people that have to buy treasuries. It's an essential part of the whole system. It's entrenched into every part of the global financial system. There is always that demand for treasuries, and so of course the value of treasuries will fluctuate, and people will buy them sometimes and they will sell them sometimes, but there will always be that market there that keeps it healthy and keeps it running. Bitcoin doesn't have that. Bitcoin, it's totally speculation. And when it's completely speculation and the price is going down, then what is it's worth? It's worth nothing when it's going down. That's a big problem. I think I saw some metrics the other day that said that basically 40% of Bitcoin is just held. And these guys are like completely, they're just holding on to it so tight. They are adamant they're not going to do anything. If there was a decline, and I think that you would have to probably get well below 20K. So I mean, it's very far away from where they are in Bitcoin right now. They're probably safe. But if you were to get a decline, a big enough decline to start convincing some of those holders to give up, like, I really think that there's a situation where there could be some real long-term harm done to Bitcoin. I believe that the run in 2020 did some long-term harm to Bitcoin. You notice it's not the same thing anymore. People don't talk about it. The price action in Bitcoin is boring, right? Like, too many people got burned. They're not interested in it anymore. And if something were to happen to the true believers that have been like hodl all this time, and all of a sudden price declines so much that those guys are giving up too, That would be really, really rough for Bitcoin. But at the moment, I don't really see any reason that should happen anytime soon. But there are some big sellers out there. The government is a big seller. Mt. Gox apparently is still out there. Things look mildly negative for Bitcoin right now. Yeah, Bitcoin will replace fiat. Yes. I really think they made a mistake there, but too late now. That was like, man, 2017. That was like 7 years ago now. Most people in the Bitcoin market don't even remember that. Like the one that's crazy to me is Mt. Gox. Hardly anybody remembers was around for Mt. Gox. I remember Mt. Gox, man. I remember that one. I was laughing my ass off with that one. I thought it was so funny. I thought that Bitcoin was dead after that, to be honest with you. And you know what? It was dead if not for some entrepreneuring people in Silicon Valley that decided to revive it. But I digress. I remember when Mt. Gox was a Magic the Gathering site. Yes. Remember that too. Like I remember, when it became like the first real exchange for cryptocurrencies, and it was like, oh, why is it Mt. Gox? Oh, because it's for Magic the Gathering. Man, it was so weird. And then at the time there was all, at that time people really believed in the using Bitcoin as a currency. That it will take over the world as a currency and is a form of transactions. Those people really, really believed in it, man. And meanwhile, you're sitting here and you're like, yeah, and your exchange comes from a Magic the Gathering exchange, and that's gonna take over world transactions. Sure. Now hardly anybody remembers it, and even for me, it's kind of like a distant, like it's like one of those memories that I'm like, did that actually happen? Go to Wikipedia. Yeah, no, that did happen. Things from before I started trading in 2017, started trading futures at least in 2017, all kind of seems like a dream, like maybe it didn't actually happen. I'm so different now, it just doesn't even seem like the same world. You've been paying attention to all the poor retail sales and how the big box stores are struggling. A lot of stores are closing. When will all this start hitting the market? I don't think it's going to, Brad. To be honest with you. So there is definitely something going on there. We're going to get a really, really big data point today on that point, because I believe that Walmart earnings is today, right? So we might get some insight into what's going on there. But the retail sales that we just got here this morning do not reflect that. This is the whole thing, was like last month's numbers, both the retail sales and the PMIs were all kind of like, hey, maybe we're falling into a recession. And that's why last week, 2 weeks ago, we were seeing the stock market just careen down, and repricing. But now the data that we've got this week kind of suggests that everything is hunky-dory. Retail sales was better than people were expecting. That's 1%, the headline number, and spot 4 versus an expected spot 1 on the core number. Well, remember, one of the biggest things that's happening right now is that the car market was struggling for a very, very long time, because basically during COVID and because of the chip shortage, price of cars skyrocketed. As somebody that had to buy a car during that time, it was not fun. And then after that, the people that had to buy a car, that were kind of forced to buy a car, they did it. And then everybody else was like, I'm going to stick with what I got. I don't think that the cars are as good, and I don't want to spend so much money on them. And so the retail car market has been just getting absolutely creamed. And over the past month, because we're expecting interest rate cuts and everything else like that, that market has kind of normalized a little bit and recovered. So that's why the headline number is so far ahead of the core number. But the core number was a lot better than expected. Because the spot one would have kind of been like, oh, okay. The market is getting weaker, but that just means, oh, we need to cut interest rates and we'll probably be fine. Right? But the difference between the spot one and the spot four is now kind of like, well, I do think we can normalize interest rates. At least we can do a 25 basis point cut. But then the economy still looks like it's actually pretty resilient and pretty strong. So what's going on with some of these like big box stores, for instance, struggling? Well, perhaps it is because we are still getting more and more of a bifurcated economy, which is to say that, working class people, the lower half of millennials and Gen Z in particular are really struggling and don't have a whole lot going for them right now. But then the upper half of millennials and all of the boomers have too much money and are spending too much. And they're not spending it at Walmart, they're spending it other places. That may be what's going on. Well, they are pushing a little bit below 113 even now. So I could take trades in here now, right? I think there was a point when it was at 3.9. I could have taken 3.9, believe it or not. I think that was when we were at 113.03 in the 10 year. Could I justify shorts down here? Okay, well, I'm really concerned about the liquidity hole. So I think that the timing of a trade would be really bad right now here. But like the possibilities of us continuing to see selling throughout the session, I think are still pretty good. This is a day where I think a downtrend day is possible. I think what happened just now with the news could lead to a possible trend day in the treasuries. Because again, I mean, first of all, it's a pretty significant news point. Everybody in the market was looking at it. We just kind of got all of the risk events for the next few weeks behind us, and they all kind of point to an economy that we could normalize interest rates on, but is still resilient. Then that means that like the 50 basis point cut isn't going to happen. They're going to have to price that out. So that means that there's not really anything to stop us from just continuing to sell. Other than, is there enough liquidity to hit into? And we are seeing a little bit of the liquidity is damaged. So I don't think that the timing is right for a trade, but I'm kind of looking at it like, even at 30 half 30, I'm sure that if I took it and held it all day, I might have an opportunity to make money from it. But not good timing for a trade. Not the right liquidity situation and everything for what we want to do. So, and you know what? Like bigger picture, I'm not sure if was really planning on taking a trade today. So let's just continue to let it marinate a little bit. While we're kind of watching it here, because let's stay on retail sales for a moment and check, Zero Hedge and others. It's communism. Kamala's first economic plan proposes price controls to combat inflation. We can talk about that in a bit. I want to look at the retail sales. For once, consensus is in line with Bank of America's omnipotent forecast for retails today, with an expectation of a spot 4% month-over-month rise in nominal spending. They were both wrong, as retail sales shot up 1% month-over-month, well above the highest forecast. That is the biggest month-over-month rise since January of 2023, so to hell with your soft landing narrative. Right, under the hood, almost everything saw a spending surge, except for sporting goods and bookstores. Well, that's interesting because I think over the last month I've spent more on sporting goods than I normally would. And bookstores. Well, I guess I need to buy more books. I have a new book, by the way. J. Doyne Farmer, Making Sense of Chaos. So this is one of those guys that have done a lot of really good market microstructure studies. But it turns out that it's kind of so funny. These guys have made like such a huge contribution to market microstructure, and that's not actually the thing that they were like the most into. The thing that this guy is the most into is complexity systems. So what this book is about is basically about agent-based models, where you create a model for each agent, and then you make like 1 million of them and have them interact in an economy and see how it works out. That's what that book is about. You should buy more books. Anyways, I digress. Let's continue reading here. There was a giant swing in auto sales, of course. According to the report, 2/3 of the increase in retail sales was due to autos. Meanwhile, dealers are slashing prices because nobody is buying cars. The non-seasonally adjusted sales bounced massively. And back to the big picture, this is the biggest month-over-month rise since January 2023. But, and it's another big but, for the 8th month in the last year, the previous month's data was revised lower, thus making the current beat more impressive. So in addition to the July print, significant revisions in either direction could alter the trajectory of retail sales, and if passed as prologue, last month's retail sales print will be revised lower in keeping with the original forecast. But since algos only react to the here and now, the big jump from a sharply downward revised previous number will be viewed much more favorably than a modest drop from an unrevised prior month, even if they both end up at the same price. And then Zero Hedge's political comment, you just can't make this stuff up. Kamalanomics is simply government manipulated data of historic data to make the current data look more favorable. Will this manipulation ever end? We suspect it will in November, if the right person doesn't save democracy. Wow. Okay. Well, so I'm glad we read that, because that did give us a key piece of information that could maybe help us. That makes me question the whole trend day scenario now. I'm kind of thinking now that there might be a delayed pushback when people start to go, well, but they revised last month's data down and this month's data might get revised down. Although, even if this month's data gets revised down, I think you can probably still make the case that the economy looks pretty resilient, and even though we can normalize rates, we probably don't need a 50 basis point emergency cut sort of a thing, right? So that could still see selling, but maybe not so extreme. Why didn't you take a short? Yeah, I maybe I should have. Well, I think that it was a mistake on my part, because obviously I wasn't going to take anything off of the initial move. So probably the earliest that I could have done anything was in this 03 to 04 area. If I was feeling really entrepreneuring today, I probably could have taken a trade in that area. I probably could have taken a trade at the 113 even. But by the time we got to the 113 even, I was kind of like, I might already be too late. I don't like that spot. And then before this last move, I noted, hey, I think we could have trend down day, but I don't think that the timing is right. So I think that I still need to wait. I think that I want to see a mean reversion period. I want to see, do they come back to 113 even? I want to see, do I start, is there pushback? Do I see big changes in cumulative delta going back the other way? And let the market kind of do its thing a little bit before I try and touch it. Larger than that, my plan for the week, I honestly had kind of forgotten about the core retail sales. And so my plan was that I would probably be fairly active on Tuesday and Wednesday for CPI, but I had not thought about would I be taking a lot of trades on Thursday. And I didn't eat very well this morning either. You know, it's like the first day of school for the kids, I think it is. So like everything's a little bit messed up. And I was like way behind for some reason. Like I got downstairs to make my food and it was already 6:15ish. So it was like, I can have a muffin. I had a muffin. So part of it was also that I had just not mentally prepared myself to be taking risks. That doesn't mean that we can't take some, but I'm going to be a little bit more choosy about it. And at the moment, especially with that we've kind of pulled back from this thing, now I'm definitely not in a position to be trying to take a trade off of that. If I were to take a trade, it would only be like market making sort of a thing. Like, I think I could probably market make here between 28.5 and 29.5. Probably would have just gotten filled at the 28.5, one tick up. Okay, maybe I could take their profit there, but I would maybe have a limit order sitting there 29.5 and see if I could get that. I suppose one could try and start building out a position in this area to see if we do get some degree of a reversal, but I don't know. But now I want to read about the presidential race, because I was kind of following a couple of weird stories yesterday. It seems like something was happening. I kind of saw some movement at the end of the day. Donald Trump put a video out, etc. And now here this morning, apparently Kamala Harris has an economic plan. So let's read about that economic plan and analyze how this might change the race. And the first thing that we have to note is that we are reading Zero Hedge, which is very right-wing balanced at the moment. So of course they're not going to like Kamala Harris. Like, the first thing that I'm seeing is it's communism. I think that Kamala Harris is a communist is going to be a narrative that dogs her the whole campaign. I myself kind of sit here and wonder, like, is she a communist or not? Like, I don't think that she would ever publicly say that she's a communist. So if she's a communist, she's a crypto communist, right? She's a communist and she's hiding it. But it's just like, has there ever been a left-wing policy or a communist economic policy that she didn't support? You know, like, if Kamala Harris is not actually a crypto communist, what would be different? Like, we're saying she is not a communist. So if she was a communist, what would be different? What would she have supported that she didn't, or she would not support that she did? You know what I mean? I'm probably making it too complicated, but at the end of the day, I'm going to bet, just based on, you know, she's in the United States and the way that people tend to think and everything, that she probably doesn't consider herself a communist. So maybe it's that she's a communist and she's in denial about it. But I digress. There is some bias in what I'm about to read. After the unoriginal Vice President Harris stole former President Trump's proposed no tax on tips policy, she is at it again with yet another recycled idea. This time, she's echoing President Biden's actions and rhetoric to crack down on sky-high food prices by proposing the first ever federal ban on corporate price gouging in the food and grocery industries. A move that reeks of socialism. There is a big difference between fair pricing in competitive markets and excessive prices unrelated to the costs of doing business, the Harris campaign wrote in a statement, adding, Americans can see that difference in their grocery bills. Oh boy. I can already see here Zero Hedge trying to present it in a certain way, but I am seeing an argument that I think is actually going to be a little bit difficult. Like the Democrats, and I say it's going to be a little bit difficult because it's been the argument for like the past 4 years, and it seems like a lot of people fall for it, and that it's hard to explain to people and help them understand why that's dumb. But their general take is that the only kind of inflation that is ever justified is cost push inflation. Is basically the argument that they're making. Okay. Let's read on and maybe I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But you guys leave your comments so that I have a better idea about which parts of this you're more interested in talking about. The Harris campaign said the vice president will unveil the new federal proposed ban on Friday at a campaign rally in the battleground state of North Carolina as part of a broader economic policy platform. The proposal will ensure food companies can't exploit consumers to increase profits, according to CBS News, citing Harris-Walz campaign officials. Harris's policy speech will also call on the Federal Trade Commission and state attorneys to examine corporations violating price-fixing rules. Her remarks are expected to echo Biden's actions and rhetoric, especially with his war against meat processing companies that he alleges are responsible for higher burger prices at the supermarket. Vice President Harris's campaign argues that lowering Americans' costs is a function of socialist-style price controls, yet this is the quickest way to understand that Harris's economic team has no actual understanding of inflation. Zero Hedges comment on Twitter, here comes the real Kamalanomics. Price controls to follow mile-long lines for food, meat coupons, shortages, food black market. Oh boy, yeah. Heritage Foundation's E.J. Antoni explained, here's your price gouging narrative. Average costs paid by businesses have risen just as much as costs charged to consumers. If businesses are being greedy, they're doing it all wrong. And then he shows a picture showing that CPI and PPI are pretty much in line. Well, but that's not what that actually shows, because it actually where's my pen here? Core PPI is actually significantly higher than core CPI. So, okay. Anyways, instead of curbing out of control government spending, which debt rises $1 trillion every 100 days, and understanding that monetary inflation driven by the Federal Reserve's money creation is the root cause of inflation, Harris deflects the actual problem, the Fed. She instead goes after big corporations for illegal price gouging. Here's a snippet of Money Metal's midweek memos, like Mahani's commenting on Harris's proposed price-fixing ban on big food companies. Man, there's all of this just in overnight, because he's like got a bunch of people to quote and stuff. The second dumb idea Mahari discussed from Vice President Kamala Harris, who was recently asked about her plan to combat inflation. Mahari criticized her response, which he described as word salad, pointing out that she merely acknowledged the problem without offering any concrete solutions. Instead, she promised to take on big corporations engaging in, quote, illegal price gouging, corporate landlords, and big pharma. Mahari argued that Harris's approach misses the root cause of inflation, which is monetary inflation driven by the Federal Reserve's money creation. Okay. Can I just for a second not all inflation, which is to say not all rises in the price of goods, is due to the Federal Reserve. Okay. When you have a big across the board change in the price of everything, it probably is because of the Federal Reserve. But if, for instance, the price of oil was going up because OPEC was artificially reducing demand, that would also probably cause that kind of inflation. It has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve, right? Okay. He cited the July budget deficit data revealing that the Biden administration sent another $574 billion in just 1 month, running a $243 billion deficit. Mahari emphasized that inflation is not caused by corporate greed, but by the government's excessive spending and borrowing. Price inflation is a symptom of monetary inflation, which has everything to do with money creation by the Federal Reserve, Mahari explained. He warned that Harris's proposed policies, including price controls, would likely lead to shortages and exacerbate the problem rather than solve it. Well, that part is true. So not all inflation is caused by the Federal Reserve, but the inflation that we have seen in the Joe Biden economy, Biden-Harris economy, I guess, has been one part Federal Reserve policy, monetary policy, one part fiscal policy, and one part supply chain disruption, which that one part is gone. So, but the monetary, the fiscal policy, they're still running a huge deficit. So that could continue to be an inflationary pressure on the economy. So when I'm talking about these sorts of things, one of the things that I'm trying to be careful about is like, which hat am I wearing? Because really my place is to be the analyst hat, right? I used to play the game of the politics that I was, that I want to convince people to vote for one person or the other, right? Now, I am going to say things about like what my overall opinion about things are, of course. And, especially when a candidate like Kamala Harris is doing right now, price controls tend to lead to shortages. And I'm going to give people what the economic facts are, even, and yeah, that's going to be like for one candidate or against that candidate. But I'm still trying to wear the analyst hat. I'm not trying to wear the political hat, right? But I have that desire to wear the politics hat from time to time. Like I want to get involved. I still kind of have that that was what I did for before this stream. Was I was really involved in politics, and so I kind of want to play in that game. Especially when it's an issue that is related to economics, right? So like, in my view right now, like the thing that's going through my head is she's a communist. I don't think that, well, obviously Kamala Harris would never publicly say that she's a communist, but I also doubt that she views herself as a communist. I kind of feel like that she takes on communist policy and doesn't realize how communist she is. You know what I mean? But I'm not a mind reader, okay? But the political approach, the approach that's probably like the most effective for politicians trying to convince people which way and whatever, is that Kamala is now Kamala Harris. That's what it is. She's Kamala Harris, and this is just kind of all now putting back on the analyst hat now that I've given you, like, this is the political strategy that I think you see come out. Strong downticks, yes. They came back down to those lows very easily, didn't they? Not just that, but like there was 6K, 5K I don't really like that though. Let's see. I'm not going to take a trade. I don't feel like I have a good edge here for some reason. And I do think that we're providing value analyzing these other things. And I don't want to get so caught up in analyzing the politics, although it's important. Do need to keep track of the price action and talk about it. There was some big orders up there. This is a time period where I think that you could see another leg of the meta order, but seeing that other leg of the meta order start off right out the gate with those big orders concerns me. That's not something that I've ever noticed before, but I've kind of got this feeling that like that limits how far they go. But it might be totally wrong here. It might be that them starting out with overcoming some really large icebergs to start out the meta order means that it's just a real monster trend. That it really is like the trend day. But so let's see. My reading is still that there's probably going to be some degree of pushback on this move now. That people are going to look a little bit deeper into the retail sales and the overall situation and say, well, this doesn't necessarily justify trend day. Okay, so going back to the politics. So here's the thing that I saw yesterday that I thought was kind of interesting. There was a story out, and I think that there was like 2 or 3 kind of leaks out of the Trump camp yesterday. Don Bongino was out very early in the morning, because I think he does like a morning stream or something like that, like warning people that this was kind of coming and that it was kind of like a ploy. And he was saying that it was like an inter-party battle, that like Kellyanne Conway was fighting with other people and trying to depose certain people in the campaign or something. I really hope that that's not what's going on. Like if you're on the Trump side of things, like there's no room for that sort of stuff, those games for personal gain. Okay, this is a serious situation. I think that the future of the country is in serious jeopardy if Kamala Harris were to become president. Like when it was Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, I just always despised Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton, she's pretty far left, but she was a competent person. I don't think that it would have been the end of the world. I think probably we would have gotten involved in more conflicts. The world would be very different if Hillary Clinton had been elected. And I think that it would be a worse world, but I don't think that it would have been the end of the world. Okay. Joe Biden, he's even further left, but he also kind of has that everyday man charm. I can see a lot of people, and he presented himself as, I'm going to actually be the moderate and just kind of normalize things. So I can see people going, okay, like falling for that and saying, let's vote for Joe Biden and get things on track and you know, preserve the empire by just going back to normalcy, sort of a thing, right? But Kamala Harris, no. You look at her record, and now you look at what she's saying. It is all very extreme far left policies that we know don't work. I think that it would do extreme damage to the country. And as you know, I get a lot of people don't like Donald Trump, but I really think that Kamala Harris would be worse and would do more damage. Like if you don't like Trump, I say we put him in there for another 4 years and just get it out of the way. You know, you put him in for another 4 years and then you're through with him. But don't lead us down the path of Kamala Harris. I'm playing the political hat again. Okay, analyst hat. There was all of that stuff kind of going on, and one of the big stories was that Donald Trump was unhappy, that he was considering replacing his campaign chairs. There's like two guys that is basically running the campaign, and he's talking about getting rid of them. So I think that those are kind of leaks. I think that we should be a little bit suspicious of those stories. But then at the end of the day, there was another story that was basically Donald Trump is pivoting to focusing entirely on the economy. And sure enough, as soon as I saw those stories coming out, there was a TikTok posted by Donald Trump attacking Kamala Harris on the economy. And part of this was driven by that we already knew yesterday or the day before that Kamala Harris was anticipated to be releasing an economic policy tomorrow on Friday. And so Donald Trump is already pivoting to it, right? So what I see right now, I think it's going to hurt Kamala Harris, but maybe not in the way that you might think. Because I've found, at least on Reddit and Facebook, actually, I've seen this on Facebook too, that the arguments that Democrats are making about inflation and economics are very appealing to a large group of people. People that haven't really studied economics and don't know that the history of price controls is almost always shortages. They find those arguments very enticing. So in that respect, you might see some people really, really like what Kamala Harris is saying and selling and everything. But where I think it's going to hurt her is the people that really know what's going on. Like, there are going to be people in the Democrat Party that are like, well, I'm a Democrat. I want to be vote blue no matter who, etc., etc., etc. But are then going to look at Kamala Harris and they're going to say, I can't do this. I can't vote for Kamala Harris. They might sit out. I don't think that they would vote for Trump, but they might sit out. They might just push back very aggressively on her, right? I think that she's going to have a problem because she's taking a policy that is such a 180 from everything that the economic data learning suggests. Musk did an excellent job of explaining inflation. Yeah, well, but that's not the problem, right? Like, okay, there's like, what is inflation, or what causes inflation, right? Well, what causes inflation is when the demand for goods outpaces the supply of goods. If we're defining inflation as a rise in prices, okay, some people want to define inflation as just the government printing too much money, but that's a different argument. Like, that definition of inflation isn't really very useful to people, so I kind of feel like let's use the words in the ways that are best for understanding in the world. So I'm going to use the term inflation to mean a rise in prices. So when the demand for goods outpaces the supply of goods, you get inflation, okay? But then there are two main types of inflation. There is cost push inflation and there is demand pull inflation. So cost push inflation is when, for whatever reason, the cost of producing a good goes up. It could be that you have less labor, so you can't produce as many of them. It could be that some of your other input costs have gone up because of disruptions, like the price of oil. Price of oil goes up. That's going to increase your costs for manufacturing that, and then you pass those increased prices on to everybody else, and that is called cost push inflation. And what Democrats do is they play this game where they pretend that cost push inflation is the only kind of legitimate inflation. That if your input costs for producing a good aren't going up, then you shouldn't be allowed to raise your prices. They ignore the demand pull inflation side of the story, which is that if I'm building the thing and I'm, selling it for more money than I did in the past, and I'm still selling out of them, then I'm just going to continue to raise my price. Because a part of it is that, like, it's kind of a problem for a company when, like, they run out of their inventory, because then you get this next group of people that want to buy it, and they can't buy it, and they kind of get fed up with you, and they go somewhere else. So that's not a good thing. So what do? They raise their prices until the price matches the demand for the good. And that's what's supposed to happen, because if you don't do that, then people will just buy everything out, and then there won't be any stuff. And then, yeah, the company does make more money from that. And
Block by.
what's supposed to happen is they use that extra profits to invest in their business more and hopefully create more supply in the future so that prices can stabilize. So I just explained that was like 3 minutes to explain that, right? And that's like the level of economics that I think you have to explain to people to help them understand why what Kamala Harris is saying is a bad idea. I guess the easy explanation for it is the easy explanation is price controls don't work. Every time that we try it, we see shortages. You see lines, food rationing, black markets. It's a bad idea. But like I said, some people are attracted to it. It's going to be the experts now that are going to be like, oh, we really can't afford Kamala Harris, can we? But we'll see. Maybe Donald Trump does a really good job. I think the other reason why this might be really bad for Kamala Harris is that right now, for Democrats in particular, Kamala is kind of like a blank slate. Actually, let me pull up this story. I found a story. I already have it open here. Here's a Newsbusters story. According to Media Research Center, between 71 and 86% of Democrats and independents said they either had not heard of Harris's position or were unsure. So basically, Kamala Harris is like a blank slate right now that Democrats are like projecting all of their hopes and dreams onto, and they don't actually know what she thinks. And as she puts out policy proposals, more and, that's first of all, now they actually know what she is, and then you're going to lose a certain percentage of them because you're going to say, oh, but I don't actually agree with that policy. Right. And her policies are really radical, right? So especially those independents, they're going to be like, oh, this is a bad idea. Right. So that's going to be the sort of thing that I think you're going to see cause Kamala Harris's popularity to decline. But it may be difficult for us to predict exactly how that's going to play out because it's such a big change in the race, right? The narrative over the past week has basically been Kamala Harris is now the nominee and she's hip and young and cool. Right. And she's rising in the polls. And Democrats are getting more enthusiastic and Donald Trump is upset. That's been the narrative, right? If the narrative switches to Kamala Harris wants to do price controls and Donald Trump is slamming her for her economic policies, that's a very different world. That's a world that I don't think is favorable to Democrats. But let's see it play out. Did she recently release a policy? So we got a hint of her policy. We're supposed to get more on Friday. So the hint that we've got about her policy is that she's pivoting to using price controls to try and control inflation. What else might be released in her economic policy speech tomorrow? We'll see. But it's probably going to be mostly that, to be honest with you. Yeah, on Friday. You're right. It's just like the parts of it kind of leaking out beforehand because one of the things that's going on here is you've got these people inside the campaigns. Anytime that something happens, they're running over to their media counterparts immediately giving them a tips, and they get paid for the tips and stuff like that. So both of these campaigns are leaking like sieves. It's just so we already kind of know that like the big point that it sounds like she's going to focus on is essentially price controls, which is, by the way, exactly what Joe Biden did. He railed at corporations and then didn't do anything, right? Yeah, I hadn't, that was something that I hadn't thought a lot about, because the whole thing was just like, okay, Joe Biden gets blamed for the inflation. And then some people say, well, that's not fair, because a large part of the inflation was monetary policy, and a large part of the inflation was fiscal policy, some of which happened under Donald Trump. And so then why does Joe Biden get all of the blame? And I always kind of said, well, the thing is yes, there was fiscal support, and we knew that we needed a certain amount of fiscal support. Otherwise, we would have gone into a very deep recession. But the question is, how much fiscal support do you actually need? And at some point, we clearly crossed that line. And so where was that line? Did we cross that line where we had too much fiscal support, back during Trump's time in office with the three support packages that we got when Donald Trump was in office? Maybe. I don't really know. But we had already done all of that stuff, and then Biden added on top of it. He should have known better at that point. And since he was the last one, I think that's why he ends up getting a lot of the blame. But now I'm realizing that no, it wasn't just that. It was also the way that he responded, because the first thing that he did was that they were in denial. The whole administration kind of bullied everybody into following this narrative that there is inflation, but it's transitory. And then when they couldn't ignore it any further, he blamed it all on corporations and said that we need to implement price controls. And everybody that has any economic sense at all knows that that's what led to shortages in the Soviet Union and so forth. And so that was probably another factor in why Joe Biden was so unpopular and did so poorly on his handling of the economy in particular. Wait, the Inflation Reduction Act didn't work yet. This is another good point, is that they made this bill called the inflation. But you know what? That was so early on. I think that when Joe Biden made that bill, that they thought, well, inflation is transitory, so we can just put whatever we want into it, call it the Inflation Reduction Act, and then we will get a reduction in inflation, and But it didn't work out that way, did it? Yep, it was a lie, and then it was transitory, and then it was good, and then it was our fault. I remember. I'm still mad about some of this stuff, man. I try to not think about it. I really don't think about it, but you guys bring it out, I'm still triggered. Like the inflation thing in particular. So I remember this one TikTok, we're sitting there, we're waiting for the number. I think it was something like we were expecting a spot 3, which was a little hot. And then it was like spot 6 or something like that, right? And then I go on TikTok and everybody's like, no, this is perfectly normal. There's nothing to worry about in these numbers. I know that the market is freaking out, but this is perfectly fine. There's all of these idiots on TikTok, like Katie Burbank and some left-wing kind of economics guys on TikTok. Ugh, it makes me puke. The people that kind of like became the influencers in the financial space for Gen Z. But no clue what's going on. And yeah, I made the video. Hey guys, I look at this number. This number is a big part of my life. That's the thing that I'm interested in, is looking at this number and trying to predict what it means for inflation and interest rates. That's my thing. And I'm telling you, this is not a normal number. These people that are telling you it's a normal number, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. I made that video. I got a lot of derision for it, but we were totally right. We were totally right. And even though I don't think that the inflation is transitory sort of thing was necessarily crazy per se, we still anticipated more inflation and we were correct. And we don't get any acknowledgement for it, and it totally pisses me off. Yeah. And it pisses me off that people like Janet Yellen that would know better would just completely go against everything that they know and abandon all principle to make their boss happy. Thanks, Janet. We put you in there because you did a good job when you were the Federal Reserve Chairman. You were supposed to be somebody that would, that talks some sense into the administration, and instead you were just their lackey. Total, it's just so sad. So sad. And so now you will no longer be remembered as the Federal Reserve Chairman that presided and was maybe even largely responsible for one of the largest bull runs in stock market history. No. Now you're known as the stooge that lied to us all about inflation for the most unpopular presidency in history's sake. They say what people want to hear and get a Nobel Prize. It goes back into the whole thing that there's not actually a real Nobel Prize for economics. The only thing that really separates those of us who pay a lot of attention to politics and news and those who say they do is that we remember stuff. We're more in tune with developments, and as such, we know what they develop into. I just remember her as Grandma Cookies. I get what you're saying. I have to think on that one a little bit. Like, this brings me back to that thought that I expressed yesterday, that what I see is on the left in particular is that the left thinks that being informed means that you're following the right sources, right? This is why they hate, like, quote unquote gurus. They hate Jordan Peterson or whoever it is. Why do they hate Jordan Peterson? Because he's like a psychologist guy, and he's talking about social issues that they call him a guru and a grifter and whatnot. Why is that? Well, because he's providing information to people through an unsanctioned conduit, right? So much so that he's like being reprimanded by the Psychologists Association of Canada for wrongthink, right? Absolutely ridiculous. But it's because he is an unsanctioned expert, right? They think that being informed is you're listening to the right sources, that you're getting your information from the government approved experts, whatnot, and you know what they said last time, and that means that you're informed. That's what they think being informed is, versus like you actually understand the issue and everything that's going on within a particular field of study. And like that's one of the really big, they put a lot of emphasis on credentialism, and this is a really big issue that I see within the Democrat Party, is that a very large portion of these people, they make a lot of money, but they are not doing things that are like super deep fields, right? And especially people that are like in the acting field and are more art people, I notice fall into this in particular, is that they don't realize how much there truly is to know about a subject. Like with politics, you can literally sit down and read about what's going on with current politics all day, literally all day, and not know everything that there is to know, because there's just so much going on. With finance, you will study a lifetime and you will not even know a fraction of a percentage of everything that there is to know about economics. It's such a huge field. And so what is actually being informed is like how much of that field do you actually know, and how much of what you know is actually like really relevant to that particular situation. And when there's stuff that's not going on, or sorry, when there's stuff that you don't know or understand and it becomes relevant, you're able to find the information and catch up really quick, right? That's how you become informed. And there's these people just don't see that, you know? So when you say the thing that separates these people is like that we remember things, I'm not so sure that it's that they don't remember things. It's that they just go along with whatever the expert is telling them. They're not actually thinking for themselves. They're not saying, hey, what they're telling me today contradicts what they told me a year ago. They're afraid to do that level of thinking on their own. Because I think right now, the biggest driver among the Democrat Party in particular is fear of being outcast. It's like social disapproval is like the biggest fear to them. So when the experts do a 180 on things, it doesn't matter. You go along with it because otherwise you're going to be thrown out, right? That's what terrifies them. And we have parts in our psyche that react very strongly to those things, especially in women, by the way, because we're dependent on a tribe and you need to play nice with the tribe. And so it's not even a conscious thing a lot of the time that you adjust your behavior and your way of thinking to conform to the tribe for survival's sake, right? What differentiates, I think, the rest of us from that is that we don't care about that. Some of us, it's because there's the neurodivergence and we just can't help it. We don't care what other people think. We don't I do not factor in what other people think about an issue and how they're going to react to what I say when I say it. I just say what I want to say. After I say it, then I think about, oh, but they might think this and maybe I need to moderate myself a little bit, you know, but that signal comes later for me. You know, other people are just so secure. They've been successful. They're confident. And so when they see people doing things wrong, they go, oh, this is an opportunity for me. And they run head right into it. And I think that that's a lot of conservatives, because conservatives tend to be more self-sufficient people. Right? I like, the more I think about it, and we've kind of been on this subject for ever since COVID, really, right? We keep kind of coming back to this subject. But I really think that that's what's going on when people say, like, we're in an unusual period in politics and all, you know, what's going on? Why is that? That's what I think it is. So what I think it is that we have destroyed our communities. Most people don't have a community. And so the community becomes, you know, the government or your political party or the internet as a whole. And then all of those kind of dynamics play at that level. And so you get all of these people that are absolutely terrified of being cast out of the tribe when it's the freaking internet. It's like, come on, man. Like, you know, if there's a certain group of people that don't like you, I promise you can go and find a group of people that do like you. Right? Even if you have the most stupid, abhorrent, beliefs out there, there's a group of people that believe like you and will take you in, I promise. Like, think about what's going on with the Kamala Harris campaign right now. The whole thing that, like, their whole campaign strategy is basically like Mean Girls and like making Kamala Harris out to be that she is popular and cool. Guys, there is nothing more uncool in life than loving politicians. There is nothing more not cool than thinking a politician is cool. That's not normal. Politicians suck. They all suck. We all hate them. That is the American way, is to hate politicians, okay? And if you have fallen into this trap where you think that a certain politician is kind of cool, there's something wrong in your life. Okay, you're missing something. You don't have a good connection with your family. You don't know the people that live around you. You know, this is like, you ever seen these? I've seen this happen with my kids, that they they don't feel like that they have friends. They don't feel very confident in themselves. And so the very first person that comes along and gives them attention, and they just latch onto it, even if that person is a complete idiot, right? They don't realize how much power they have. They don't realize how much opportunity there is out there and how much better they could do. They just latch onto the first thing that they have. That's what's happening. There's people that have no community, and the first thing that comes along is their politics. And then it just completely controls them. That's the only way that this sort of thing can happen. We're getting a second leg? I think so. Well, I don't know. Like, here's the thing. Let's analyze this for a little bit. Didn't this kind of feel like a leg? It kind of did. Granted, the cumulative delta wasn't that big of a change, but when you look at the larger picture, it continues to sell. So I don't know if we're in a situation that we're necessarily getting legs per se. I think that we may be in a situation where they're just scrambling to sell whatever they can, and that those kinds of things maybe go out the window a little bit. But it kind of makes it difficult to find a spot in it, I feel. I think I'm still going to stick to not touching it, even though it really seems like it's going. I feel like that often when we get the biggest moves that I don't get involved. I do wish that I had bought 3.9. There was a point where I could have taken 3.9, and I decided to wait. So I guess we could say it was a little bit stronger than I thought initially. Like before the news, I didn't expect it to go this far. After the news, then I analyzed it and I kind of saw that, but by that point it was maybe already too late. By the time I'd realized it, right? Like maybe even here could still make some money, but. One thing I should also note is that they didn't really come back to that 113 even and hang out there, right? Instead, they hung out at 29 and barely had any kind of, just kind of went sideways there before taking this latest plunge. Now, granted, they've only increased the low by one tick so far, so. It is probably, if it does continue to downtrend, it's going to be one of those ones that's really tough to play, because it's basically like the liquidity is going to be kind of sucking it up the whole way, and so the flows that you're seeing and the way that the bids and offers are reacting to it and everything kind of can be a little bit deceptive. It reminds me of yesterday, and it took a lot of selling to do. Yeah, except for that, the change that we're getting this morning, I think, is a lot bigger than the change that we had yesterday. Well, how much is it? Let's say if we take off, well, no, let's just start from where we started. 115 to now 90, so 25K. No social circle for vibes. You can hear that a lot. Yeah, maybe it all turns into an argument about economics again, and the vibes thing goes away. Possible. Because like that's another thing that I'm still really bitter about is like all of the arguments that I've had with people online over the last 4 years about inflation and being basically proven right, and these people still living the delusion. You know, like I got banned from the r/inflation subreddit for posting a study. Posting a study that basically showed, you know, disproved the Democrat its corporate greed theory, and got banned for it. I'm mad about that stuff, man. Pisses me off. Trying to help people be more informed, and you say the thing that they don't want to hear and they ban you. They silence you. Well, they gave 2 ticks back. Another thing I need to note about the price action, you know, I think I need to do better about this. Like maybe I need to come up with like a list and like a because there will be like certain factors that I kind of like miss and like don't notice until later. So the factor that I'm noticing right now is the change in the yield curve. So it's different when I look at the 2 and the 10. But when I look at the 30 and the 10, what I see was a huge amount of steepening, and now the 30-year catching back up. That's a big dip that is unwinding. So that's going to be a factor, major factor. We're going to come over here and we're looking at the 30-year because the 30-year is kind of catching up to the 10-year. In other words, the 30 years was going down faster. Which kind of suggests to me that some of that movement that you're seeing might be because of yield curve related flows and so forth, and not necessarily like another large meta order. Because I think you're right, Octavius, that like the timing is right and we are seeing price decline. I don't think that the cumulative delta is super clear because the change over this period from when it flattened out to when we've gotten this next leg is only about 10K difference. So I would say that we're only kind of tepid on that last one. And so that's making me a little bit cautious on that this is another like a real true leg that's really going to run. That, and it's already pulled back 2 ticks after only extending the low by 1 tick. I missed this comment from Uzi earlier. A potato with a doctorate knows more about auto mechanics than a human car enthusiast. Dude, every once in a while, TikTok will show me like clips from car enthusiast podcasts or something. And they'll always be talking about some performance metric and the way that a car engine works and everything that is so far over my head, man. Those guys get into it. They get into it. Well, so now that we have the lay of the land here on the political side, let's hop over to Reddit and see if we are seeing those narratives play out already. Okay, so the first thing that I'm seeing is a story from r/conservative. Kamala Harris will pay you not to work. She has endorsed several measures that resemble universal basic income. That's been a big story over the past weeks because there was a study about basic universal income, and that study, its conclusion was that the people that were given basic universal income ended up making less. That like that additional income disincentivized them, essentially. So conservatives are really hailing that one study as conclusive proof that it's a bad idea. Well, I do think it is pretty strong evidence. I wouldn't call it conclusive, but the one big issue I see with basic universal income is that you can't test it. You can't go and say, oh, I did this in this one city, and so that proves that it works or it doesn't work, because it's not universal, right? It's not until it's universal and everybody in the United States gets it that you could really see how it plays out. Yes. Okay. r/economics hires to target price gouging in first policy speech in North Carolina. Let's read the comments on this. This is from r/economics. And of course, the moderators are going to have a hard time keeping a lid on these conversations, but let's see how good of a job they do. Open borders and UBI would be a disaster. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's already a disaster with the incentives that we're giving for people to come over illegally, right? We treat illegal immigrants better and give illegal immigrants more goodies. Like literally in New York, they're literally giving them like credit cards and stuff. And then we have our own homeless and especially our veterans, so we don't do anything for them. And yeah, it's encouraging a lot of people to come over that wouldn't otherwise. My lived experience is conclusive enough. We've had enough people quit their jobs on us because they get pregnant and they get an extra $100 a month in food stamps. People who get stuff for free stop doing things. Is that going to keep going? No. Okay. I thought for a second they were going to make another new low and make me feel really extra FOMO-y, but actually, I think I'm doing pretty good today, like being like, no, I'm not. It's just not the right trade for me. Especially when you're working your butt off, etc. And it means more logical to literally not work and make more sometimes. Well, like, okay, so this is like one of the things that really bothers me about a lot of people's approach to things, though, is that they think that the solution is like how much people work, when really improvements in people's quality of life only come from increases in productivity, right? You see, if it was working hard was what really created wealth and improved things, then the best way to make that happen would be for the government to, you know, put a ton of money into creating a bunch of jobs and everybody work for the government, right? That would be the way. But we know that that doesn't work. That was what communism was, and it didn't work. So why is that? Well, because the improvements in quality of life come from productivity increases, which basically means that increases in quality of life come from innovations. Innovations require investment. And so this is why one of the major reasons why the Soviet Union had problems. So you couldn't innovate unless the government was pursuing it. You couldn't innovate on your own. And that's also why we should be concerned when we start to see government become too large of a percentage of GDP, because that's money that should be in the markets creating innovations. And when the government becomes too large, it slows that innovation and it slows progress in people's improving quality of life. The fun part was what Florida voting for the $15 an hour minimum wage did to that dynamic. Oh yeah. Well, what was it before? Did they change it that much? Did some people move to different jobs? That's kind of weird. Anyway, I should be reading these comments here. What was it? They wouldn't have to price fix if they would just enforce antitrust and restore competition to the markets. Yeah, there are definitely markets that saw a lot of inflation and are super competitive. Are you telling me that the automaker market is not competitive? Come on. Like, there's been some consolidation in it, but there's still like 6 major car makers. They all kind of suck right now, but hey. That's a weird thing about cars. I've been noticing that the car talk, they're unhappy about everything. Like, obviously Stellantis, they're just terrible, right? They're the worst. But like Toyota, for instance, everybody loved Toyota, and they're not happy about the latest iteration of Toyotas. They've had some problems. Part of it is that they need to be around for a few years for them to kind of like get everything fixed and to really get a super reliable car. So part of it may just be that if you want a Toyota, you need to wait a few years. But then yes, you're getting hybrids and EVs that people don't want. It's like you want a 6-cylinder or even an 8-cylinder car, and like they're charging, you know, this what you would have, what would have gotten you a 6-cylinder is getting you a 4-cylinder now, right? And so they're all just unhappy with everyone. They're like, Toyota sucks, Honda sucks. So, it's just all across the board. Hopefully they plan to leverage the FTC to break up businesses that have too much market power. I would love to know which specific companies they want to break up. Let's talk about that. Is it Google? We're talking about breaking up Google. There we go. I hate politicians so much. There's no incentive to think about the long-term health of a country. Every decision is about trying to get enough votes to win an election. Eliminate taxes on tips. Okay, cool. We got all the service workers. More food stamps. Okay, we got all the poor. Welfare votes, etc. That is 100% what's going on. And Donald Trump plays into it too. And I hate it. Like, no taxes on tips in general sounds like a good idea. But like, if all the policy was is no taxes on tips, that would be a bad thing. That would be a bad thing. You'd have to put limits on it and all these complications. Ways that kind of would make you think, well, maybe we shouldn't have taxes on tips. Government price controls have always been and forever will be disastrous for economies and the poor people subject to them. If we are concerned about existential threats to our freedoms and democracy, this has got to go right at the top of the list. Economic tyranny is not the solution to problems caused by printing money and massive government spending. Rent control has never made housing more affordable. Price controls on goods have never ever tamed inflation. This is just plain fact. Economic reality denial is worse than climate change denial. For all our failings, the US is still a leader in getting to the solutions to climate change. That's only possible due to growth-based economy with lots of innovation. Government price controls don't just ruin economics. They will result in the US no longer being able to lead on climate change. As her first actual stated policy stance, this one is horrid. This guy doesn't sound like a super Republican to me. Right? I think that there's still a large portion of the, like, if we look at the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, and then we look specifically at like the people that are engaged in politics or that are engaged in policy and kind of understand things that are going on and are really like the kind of people that will go to participate in county, state level party leadership, and you know, these kinds of people, like the real I don't want to say activists, but you know, people that are involved. Okay. I think that there's still a majority of those people that are involved in that way in the Democrat Party that believe in free markets and will not like this policy. So I think that this is like a big mistake for her. She should have just you know, stayed quiet. Never released any kind of policies. See if it could probably work. That would probably be better than proposing price controls. We're always fighting the last war. Look at any CPI, PPI, PCE graphs. Inflation started rising above trend in spring of 2021, peaked in summer of 2022, and has fallen back to around 3% by summer of 2023. For the last year, it has been essentially flat, though it's now starting to trend down again. Unfortunately, the average person out there thinks that ending inflation means returning prices to 2020 levels, and that's never going to happen because it would require massive deflation. Yes. We could get prices back to 2020 levels if there was a recession. Yes, when I'm in power, I will fix all of this. I promise, says women in power. Yeah, okay, so one of the big problems with this policy proposal is that this is essentially exactly what Joe Biden proposed. And obviously, they don't actually have the ability to implement this policy. Yeah, John says, all my income will now be classified as tips. That's exactly right, John. If there is no taxes on tips, I am going to go, I should go, I'm going to, but I should go full bore into how many tips can I get here on the YouTube stream, right? I don't know what I could do to make it like cooler and like encourage people more to like tip us on the stream. But if I could make a significant portion of my income from tips and it wasn't taxable, that's a pretty good gig, guys. I could pull it off. More stream tips. Yeah, exactly. None of this, $1 sticker, guys. You gotta give, start doing the big ones. How come Dr. Disrespect, who I'm not going to go into that whole thing, but how come Dr. Disrespect, they give him $100? You telling me that Dr. Disrespect has a richer audience than I do? Come on, guys, we gotta step it up here. No, not right now. Only don't give me any tips. Only give me tips if this no taxes on tips things actually happens. Okay. And if there's a limit, like if they say no taxes on tips unless the tips exceed like X thousand per year, then we're gonna be like, we'll only go right exactly to that amount, right? I think so. I think that super chats should be classified as a tip, yeah. And if they're not, YouTube should change things around a little bit so that they fit the actual definition of a tip. Okay, well, this r/. Okay, here's somebody a little bit more liberal. I was gonna say so far it's been all very not good for that. All, what I'm having struggling here. Blah, 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 blah. Does not seem very positive for Kamala Harris in the r/economics sub, and it's a little bit too far tilted. Maybe by the end of the day, the Democrats will kind of push back in here, but so far it seems like they all don't like the policy. So ironic to me the way conservatives shifted public thinking on prices. For decades, conservatives screamed and yelled about free markets and allowing market forces to determine prices and standards for regulations. And then, for the sake of slandering Democrats, conservatives blamed the government for rises in gas prices and the cost of eggs. And now the public sort of broadly accepts that government has a role to play in price control. Now governments are running. No, that is not what happened at all. Good grief. I mean, there are some government policies that have been bad for prices and everything, but that's a hard one to even begin like dissecting, because you can see that he's kind of using his intuition to kind of make that assertion, but it doesn't fit logically. Like, yes, so because government causes prices to go up, that doesn't mean that then the government should fix that by fixing prices. No, the government should fix that by getting out of that game whatsoever and stop doing the things that are, screwing with the markets. Price gouging is a bogus term. It's a negative appellation created by low IQ people who don't understand economics. Adam Smith said the most effective palliative to a dearth is to raise prices. When prices rise, everyone limits their own consumption, so it is spread evenly amongst the people. When prices are kept artificially low, or even worse, rationing, people consume too much, which makes the situation even worse. We should do better to educate ourselves and do away with these bogus terms. Anyways, I'm like looking for you know, the advice animal memes about economics now. This is our chance to shine, guys. I gotta be active today on the meme posting and all of that sort of stuff. I need to come up with my own advice animal meme about this situation. I have to think about that. What? Tim Waltz ignored Kamala's phone call when she was calling to ask him to be her vice president pick? That's funny. That sounds like something that I would do. Like, not hear it and not pick it up. Conservatives exhibit greater metacognitive inefficiency, study finds. While both liberals and conservatives show some awareness of their ability to judge the accuracy of political information, conservatives exhibit weakness when faced with information that contradicts their political beliefs. That sounds a little sus. Because my observation has been that most Democrats never even have their political beliefs contradicted ever. So, you know. Okay, so I am seeing stuff about it on Reddit, but mostly they're like, because Reddit knows that I'll be interested in those things. I'm not seeing it like more widespread yet. I'm not going to read that one. Yep, I think that's about it so far. Taking a step, well, it's come back a lot now, hasn't it? Okay, well, so probably what I should be showing you right now then, or probably what you're going to want to see is this, huh? 113.03. Oh, that's actually higher than I thought it would be. That's all the way back to where I was kind of like, oh, that's where I should have taken the trade. I don't know. That one seems a little bit too far, but the flow is definitely there, man. You know, I feel like this trade is a little bit too risky for me, given it's the summer and my current state, and, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm just a little traumatized lately, but this feels like a hero trade that I would take, huh? Because I think that there's a pretty good argument to be made that because of the revisions to the previous month's number, that there should be some pushback to this, right? And now you're seeing it in the flows. You're definitely seeing that somebody taking that trade in the flow. And they're pretty aggressive about it at the beginning too, which kind of suggests to me like a risk-taking hedge fund kind of play. So I like it. I'm kind of jealous. I kind of want to take it. I'm kind of jealous, but I don't have the guts for it today. Ugh. You know what's something else that triggers me a lot? World's largest political betting platform has Kamala Harris at 53% chance to win the election. Poly market is tiny. Let's look at the poly market. 2024 presidential election. Trump versus Harris. Balance of power. Yeah, they're not even going to show you. They're not even going to show you. Well, maybe I can click on Trump. Top holders. Okay.
Walk by.
So there's a yes holder that owns 4,000 shares. Oh, 4 million shares. So there is somebody that's bet half a million on yes that Donald Trump will win. It might be a market maker though. I'm trying to look for like daily volume, but they're not showing it. You know why? Probably because it's not very high. Probably not very good. So we don't have the information to really show you, but it looks to me like poly market is not a very liquid market and that you could probably move price pretty easily. I wouldn't trust any of those numbers. You got VWAP. You consider 30 VWAP? What's the activity link on the top? Activity. Ugh. It's just a feed of all trades. There are people betting hundreds of thousands on it though. But nothing that shows me chart or the book. That would be the other thing is, can I see the book? That actually is suspicious. Are there actual market makers on this market, or is everybody market making with poly market? That could be. That would also be concerning, right? Because I know when it was Predictit, when Predictit was the top platform, that was not very liquid, you know? Wouldn't the VWAP be 31? No. It kind of stopped there, though. I'm still more kind of focused on, like, they pushed back really hard. That was fast. You know, if I was really convinced that like today was going to be a trend down day or something, I would be going short here again. I'm more interested in the pushback trade. Oh, look, they pushed through it again already. Wow. Like this is a really aggressive long flow. Oh, you get out of it 1 to 2 ticks in front. Well, that's probably is a good rule. Did I do that on stream? I made an indicator. So I've always kind of had problems with trying to use ATR and whatnot to determine what my stops and targets should be. And so I made a different one that approached it slightly different. What was it? This one instead of using like ATR and whatnot, I think it's just like the range. Oh, no, wait, it is an ATR. Oh, I remember now. I'm using 2 ranges. So I'm using like the short-term range and the medium long-term range. And so then like your profit is based on the short-term range and your stop is based on the long-term range, essentially, was kind of how I changed it. And it's like a percentage of that range. Taking a percentage of that range. Rather than just trying to use the ATR times a float or something. Anyways. This changed things. This changed things. And when I back-tested it, it basically was showing that if you tried to make your profit equal to the range, you made less. That you had to be going for either less than the range or more than the range. Kind of suggesting to me that, like, okay, if there is a place you're expecting it to come back to it for whatever reason, that you should take the profit 1 or 2 ticks ahead of that, because you're less likely to fill that exact spot or past that spot. Like, you always want to take it a little bit early. Volatility is always trying to contract on you. That was the kind of an interesting result I had gotten. I kind of need to work on that one a little bit more. Because I changed it to trying to do the Fourier stuff, but I don't think that that's quite the right way to play it. I think that the right way to play it is like, well, how much time do I got left? I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut this out. And I'm going to say public void trade Fourier. So I can save that. I don't think I need these. Yeah. Okay. Let's say that if the high of the current bar, the bar that just closed rather, is less than the high of the bar before it, and the low of the current bar is greater than the low of the bar before it. And do I have a trend? Yeah, is right. And okay, so if there is an inside bar, essentially, then if is rising trend, and then if is falling friend. Oh wow, they came all the way back to 113 even. Well. There's still a little bit of shift in the yield curve. The 30 is still lagging a little bit, and so it's not back to the 3.09, 3.9 rather. Oh, missing. No, there was one that did good. What was it? Come on. Is it doing it on 1 minute bars? Well, so I think I want to do it on 5 minute bars. No. First we got to change this to Degenerate Gambler. And we're going to do it on the S&P 500 and 5 minute bars. And just this year, include commissions. Stop and target. I'm giving myself a little bit of room, but I do think that it was like there was better than that. Stop was way bigger than that. Well, we're going to just start with that. Okay, that did not take any trades, so probably have an error in here. Yes. Out of range. Oh, yes. That's weird that it's on bar 275 that it doesn't like. Well, so the first thing is that now I have to say if bars in progress does not equal 0, return. It might be that, because I have 3 bar series on this thing, so that's better. Okay, and then so here on the higher time frame, let's call the higher time frame 30 minute. Okay, cool. And what are we getting? 55% profitable. And what is my risk reward? 0.68. Bids are super thick. Liquidity is increased as we came up, huh? So is this better or worse than what I was getting? It seems like it's worse in some ways. That did not improve it as much as I thought. Yeah, that's a lot better. Wait, that changed it a lot. What if I say it has to be below 0.3? That doesn't change it too much. Volatility ceiling of 1 is not only cuts out like 2 days. Well, let's look at the analysis here. I'm not quite sure what else to do. It's kind of starting to do what I want, but it seems like I need more to the entry settings than that. Basically, it's looking for an inside bar and then looks at the larger trend to decide which way to go. Okay, let's try the opposite. If we get an inside bar, it's mean reversion, so it should go back the other way, sort of a thing. Could be interesting. Could be interesting. It's terrible. It's terrible. Oh, that's so interesting, actually. That it's that much worse. I wasn't sure if that would help or hurt, but I didn't, if it hurt, I thought that it would either help or it would kind of just be the same. But no, that was a huge difference. That was a huge difference. With the way that this is going, I might, if I go for a larger data series, there might be some periods where it worked well. Let's see. Nope. The win to loss is like way too tight. Yeah, see, bringing that in. Well, optimize. And be like a few hundred iterations, right? Make sure this is all correct. That I want the RT threshold to be small. Like that basically, I don't want it to be trying to do this during a trend. And we had the higher time frame, 30. Don't go for profit factor, just go for max net profit. Okay, 2,000 is a lot, but I think we'll be okay. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, only a tick above 113 even. I could see more of this coming back though. That was a good flow. I'm really surprised. I mean, I guess I need to trust myself more. You know what? It wasn't that I didn't trust myself. It was that I kind of said I'm not going to take a trade today. Was as kind of more like I didn't eat enough and I didn't feel like I was like super on in the morning, and then there was other stuff to look at anyways that kind of made me think this isn't worth playing, but that would have been a good trade, and I probably could have caught some of this too, but that in particular is, you know, and we did kind of have an intuition that it was going to happen. I'm glad that at least one of you guys took it though, right?
Block sell.
Ooh, big sell, huh? Ew. Okay, we're okay on RAM usage so far, so I think we should be able to make it through the back test without anything crashing. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. See, that's why it's good to have a wood desk now, huh? I can do that. I can walk. Can you hear that? Yeah. No, you can't. Maybe you can barely hear it. See, Zero Hedges changed their front page story to U.S. retail sales beat thanks to yet another massive downward revision. Do you think that there's a large enough number of traders out there reading that specific story to cause the flow that we saw? I'm kind of starting to wonder these days. RFK Jr. tried to meet with Harris in pursuit of a cabinet position. That one is an interesting story to me because it sounds like that they didn't want anything to do with him and that he's shopping around. You need a job that bad, RFK? Walmart beats earnings lift outlook as consumers trade down to big box retailer. Oh, okay. Well, there goes that theory that I was like, well, maybe it's just the rich people are doing all the spending. No, actually, Walmart actually isn't doing as bad as we thought. Okay. I'm wondering what you probably should be concerned about 113 getting them pinned. Okay, it did find one. It did find one that was net profitable. Let's look at the analysis. Okay. That's okay. I'm not necessarily looking for a strategy that I would like trade myself or anything. I'm looking for a strategy that really well duplicates what I think a lot of retail traders are doing to kind of show them what the pitfalls are with it, right? Because what will happen is they'll start trading it and it will do this and they'll be like, oh yeah, this is a great strategy. See, it really totally works. And they don't see this, that actually, no, it doesn't really work very well. So what were the parameters that it used? It wants to use a target of 3.9 and a stop of 4.9. Okay, I can go along with that. Open in new strategy analyzer tab. And then do it over a much larger time period from 2019. Will it still be profitable? Fingers crossed. You know what? We shouldn't have crossed our fingers because being superstitious is bad luck, guys. It does make money on the long side, though. Probably only because it's spoos, right? Hey, that's not too bad, though. Like, that's not too bad. That is exactly what I want to see, actually. Because, like, look, what was this time period? From 2019, it's from December of 2019 to, when is this? April. Actually, all the way to, like, 9 months. So there's a period of about 9 months where it did pretty okay. And then here's a period of, from 2021, 0108. Hey, that's a great time to start, actually, 2021. Through the COVID era, essentially, to what? 2022-06. So that's about a year and a half where it worked okay. Yeah, I had this drawdown. It was kind of rough, but it kind of worked okay. And then what happens? All of a sudden, goodish. Right? That's exactly what I want to show to people. Like, this is what happens, guys. When you trade quote unquote price action, you're taking excessive risk reward. You get some periods where it's you're making money, you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden, what the heck? You just all at once you lose it. Yep. And in the end, the results are random, but over a 1 to 2 year period, you can actually do really well within that time. Now, if we come over here and we look at some of these other things, do we get any? Okay, so there are some days where your net profit is a bit much. Do I not have the, I guess I don't have those risk controls added on there. I probably should. And what was the net? Okay. Oh, the total net profit was 615. Okay. So that means that adding on like a daily loss limit would probably make this strategy net profitable. Okay. MAE and MFE. So do we have a ton of, you know, there is kind of this spot where it's like it can go against you. It can go against you 50 ticks and then still end up being a winner. That's pretty crazy. There are definitely more losers over here, so I'm kind of curious why it picked that stop and target and everything. Oh, because it lets them run. It lets them ride. I see. There are... I don't like these, though. These... Especially these. Those are like... Those could have been profitable. We could have moved those up to here. So what does that say for, like, our efficiency? Okay. Interesting. So if I set a... So when we have an inside bar, if instead of just saying enter long, I used some sort of a formula to determine where to place my limit order within that range, that might improve my entry efficiency and help the strategy out. Because the entry efficiency looks a little bit like, if everything's in the middle there, you know, I'm not like a huge expert on this particular measure, but my understanding is that if it's all in the center, that means that it's kind of random. And that what you really want is like everything up here. Exit efficiency is, you see how there's like a tons that are like up here. That means that like you took it just went right up into your target and you got it. That's good. Like you don't want them down here. You don't want these ones where like it pulls back way far before you exit and you have so many profits left on the table. I think what I need to do is I need to look at the big bar and then say that my limit order is like within 20% of the low of that bar or something like that. That would probably result in a lot less trades though. But the question is, how interesting is that this is worth taking further? Well, I think that I do find some evidence for, okay, take outsized risk reward within a mean reversion type period. So that could be worth applying to something that we think has more edge, like some sort of an order flow setup that we might be able to test soon. Yeah, like, I would really like to test just your standard cumulative delta. I think I have a strategy like that somewhere. Well, I need to make my own cumulative, like cached cumulative delta is what I need to do. Yes. I've always like avoided making a cumulative delta indicator because like NinjaTrader has one. But if I'm adding a feature to it, and the feature is that it caches, so I should make that. That would be actually really easy to make. And then we can do some back testing with it. Well, I'm going to close this now. Got about a few minutes left. So they came up as high as 02. So they came all the way up to here. Book is pretty thick. Reverted back to a pretty good spot. It's been gone pretty flat, so it looks like they're building a real hole here. Like they've kind of done their move and are like, this is an okay place. Oh, and by the way, also, this one right here, this one is like, okay, somebody's taking a big risk buying up here. They got their spot. They all took profits. That's interesting. The how much cumulative delta, negative cumulative delta there was in the 10-year there compared to how far it went back down. So these guys, they all took their sellers came in, took profits, didn't push it down that much. There's still a pretty good solid liquidity in bids. I guess because the liquidity, built up here. That's interesting. So does that tell us anything? It could mean that the downs. I do think it kind of suggests that the worst of the downside is over, and that we might get a little bit of levitation here. Just kind of like very slowly creeps up. It might not even be all today. Of course, do we have... I don't think we really have anything too significant tomorrow, do we? Building permits and housing starts and consumer sentiment. Consumer sentiment probably matters. Especially if it was really positive, then that would really put the kibosh on the whole, like, hey, economy is about to go into a recession, yada, yada, yada. One of the things I'm seeing a lot on Reddit here is, oh, the Make America Great Again's people, all they want to do is make rich people richer. And I don't think that is a driving factor behind that movement at all. I think that it's very much, here's this group of people that have been disadvantaged by the current US policies, and we want to fix that. It's like all of the sudden I'm seeing a very communist feeling type of campaign that doesn't make any sense. I'm not sure that people are going to buy into that. Hmm. Oh, what's this? Remember, totally forgot about this. We put our cost basis on the Japanese yen. Well, this is exactly why I was kind of like, I don't think it's going to work very well on it. Is that it doesn't seem to respond to the levels in the way that it does in Zen at all, right? Because again, the flows in the currencies aren't very dominant because it's not the primary market for it. I'm going to take that off. It just makes it hard for me to see what happened in the Japanese yen today. All right, here we go. CNBC Harris to propose federal ban on corporate price gouging in food and groceries. BBG says, hi, dude, you should have come like 2 hours ago. We got 5 minutes left. You have 5 minutes to ask all of your deepest questions about the markets before I have to go. The fact that, okay, so coming back to the politics thing. So if you missed it earlier or, my disjointed thinking kind of didn't make it clear what I was looking at here. Kamala Harris is making economic policy speech on Friday. And Donald Trump has, in anticipation of that, pivoted towards talking about economics and how terrible the Joe Biden economy has been and trying to tie Kamala Harris to that. And so my question was, does this really reflect a true shift in narratives and strategies for the campaigns? And if it is, do we see the internet reacting to that? And what I am seeing is, yes, in fact, there are a number of memes, much more so than they were a couple of days ago, in advice animals and so forth, kind of pushing like almost communist narratives. The Republicans only want to help the rich. Republicans are going to crush worker protections, right? Actually, let me just kind of show. Let's see if I can show you. See, they claim to be pro-worker but want to fire civil servants, ban public sector unions, cut overtime pay, and let states ditch federal. I don't know where there's coming about cut overtime pay, but I kind of agree that there are a lot of government workers that we don't need, and I don't think that government workers should negotiate against the taxpayer. Okay. Here's one. Their sole agenda is to make rich people richer with more advantages. These are communist memes. These are the memes that the people at late stage capitalism make. And then we get into like older ones. So I am seeing some signs that the Democrat astroturfing machine has pivoted here. I guess two posts this morning aren't enough, but we'll look at the end of the day and see how many there are. it looks like the Democrat astroturfing machine has pivoted. And I really don't think you can say that so organic like this early in the morning, right? Like, does American market give leverage or margin? That question doesn't make any sense, but I'm going to try and answer it anyways. So when you're trading in futures, you have to use a margin account, which basically means that for every contract that you are trading, you have to have a certain amount of money in your account to continue holding the position. If you lose too much in that position, you're basically forced to either add more money to the account or liquidate the positions. So if I want to trade the micro ES futures, you usually have to have $500 per contract in your account. So if you only have $500 in your account and you take a position and it starts losing, then when your account goes below the $500 threshold, your broker will probably cut you off, right? So you kind of have to think about something like, okay, I want to trade one contract and I expect that my drawdown is going to be like a $500 drawdown based on my back testing. And so that means that, and I have to have $500 in there for one contract. That means that I need to have more than $1,000 in the account to start with. Otherwise, my maximum drawdown risks getting me to the point where I can't trade the contract anymore. And yes, it is leveraged, but you don't really think about that. The way that you do it is what is the instrument worth per tick? And, how far on average is it going on the sort of trade that I'm doing? And then you just see how much you're going to make or lose. And you use that to determine things like how big your account needs to be or how many contracts you're going to trade. My mother wanted to know yesterday why Tim Waltz went to China 30 times with young boys. Maybe he is a commie. He does have some really suspicious ties to China. I don't know about the young boys thing, but so going back to this thing, I don't know if Kamala Harris would consider herself a communist because I'm not a mind reader. I certainly think that a lot of her policies are super left-leaning and communist in nature. But Waltz has straight up called himself a socialist. In fact, the quote is, some people call it socialism, but I call it just being a good neighbor. They tried to equate socialism with being a good neighbor. He is a full-on socialist, and I have to think that she likes him because he's as far left as she is. So how aware she is herself of like how extreme her policy is and like where she fits on the political spectrum, who knows? But maybe it doesn't matter. Like, that's the whole thing, is I'm looking at this from the lens of like based on logic and like what we know, what can we prove about what she thinks and yada yada yada. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. They're gonna call her a communist. And yeah. Should be fun. Kamala Harris. The politics side of me wants to go put on the politics hat and start calling her Kamala Harris everywhere. All right. Well, anyways, it's time for me to get going, guys. So I will see you tomorrow. In the meantime, stay